Hello, my name is Father Lawrence Jagfeld. I am a Franciscan friar of the Sacred Heart Province, and I am the administrator of CUSA, an apostolate of persons with chronic illness and or disability. The Gospel, once again, finds us reading the words of St. Luke. He then addressed this parable to those who were convinced of their own righteousness and despised everyone else. Two people went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a tax collector. The Pharisee took up his position and spoke his prayer to himself. "O God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income." But the tax collector stood off at a distance and would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast and prayed, "O God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, the latter went home justified, not the former. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Once again, we find ourselves talking about prayer, just as we did last week on the 28th Sunday of Ordinary Time. Once again, here we are on the 29th Sunday of Ordinary Time talking again about prayer. In fact, St. Luke's Gospel speaks of prayer more than all of the other Gospels combined. The Gospel of St. Luke begins at prayer as Zechariah goes into the Holy of Holies to offer incense. And it is there that he is greeted by the angel and told about the birth of his son. Jesus is at prayer right before he picks his apostles. We're told in the infancy narrative that Mary kept all these things in her heart prayerfully. Jesus is at prayer when he is transfigured on the top of the mountain. We hear Jesus at prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus gives us several parables about prayer, and he talks about prayer in other instances as well. Is it any wonder then that the Gospel of St. Luke is called the Gospel of Prayer? Now, if I were to give a very brief homily today, I would simply say 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One did, the other didn't. The Pharisee is not praying. The Pharisee is bragging. The Pharisee is boasting. The Pharisee is trying to impress God with how good he is, with how righteous he is. And in so doing, he proves that he is not a righteous man. For the word righteous simply means to be in right relationship. And this man is not in the right relationship with God. He's making himself out to be more important than he really is. Whereas the tax collector realizes who he is in the eyes of God and simply accuses himself of being a sinner. Much was made of the current Holy Father's interview that appeared in Jesuit magazines around the world. It began with the statement that the Pope considers himself a sinner. Unfortunately, while that particular statement of the Pope really is the way to interpret the rest of the interview, most of the pundits, most of the commentators completely skipped over that part and went to the point about what is he going to change. The fact of the matter is that when we admit that we are sinners, we realize that it isn't the church that needs to change, it is ourselves that need to change. If we admit that we are sinners, then we are the ones who must change. Now, St. Bernard of Clairvaux also gives us a commentary on this particular parable, a commentary that I particularly like. He tells us that when we pray, it is like we are on a journey. And the first person that we encounter in that journey is God Himself. And when we make that encounter, we realize how little we really are and how great God is. The second thing that we meet in the course of that journey is our neighbor. And when we meet our neighbor, if we are truly at prayer, we will realize that we are all the same. Every one of us is a sinner. And the third person that we meet on this journey of prayer is ourselves. And when we look in the mirror and see ourselves, we, if we are honest about it, recognize the fact that we are not worthy, we are not people who have earned any of God's love. We simply are loved because of who God is. As we listen to this parable, it's important that we recognize who we are, who our neighbors are, and who God is. It's important that we recognize that God is the creator, we are the creatures. It is important that we recognize that we are all brothers and sisters together. And it is important that we recognize, as Pope Francis has told us, that we are all sinners. This is truly what it means to be a righteous person, to be in right relationship with God, to be in right relationship with our brothers and sisters, in fact, to be in right relationship with ourselves. For more information about CUSA, please visit our website at www.cuson.org or look us up on Facebook.